Hello and welcome to another episode of Gully Cricket to Bouncy Wicket podcast. I'm your host Srinivas.
Hi, this is Manoj.
And hi, this is Raja.
Today we are going to be joined by our friends from the Top Order podcast, all the way from New Zealand. And if it is not obvious, we are going to do the preview of WTC finals. And we have been planning for this episode for close to 2 months now, and the day has finally arrived. Welcome to the show, guys.
Cheers, thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to be here. Looking forward to this World Test Championship final.
Thank you. It's nice that all of us could, get together finally. So, Manoj, to start with, there are quite a few discussions about different teams playing different number of matches, and then there was a lot of confusion in the point system. So, just talk us through, what this point system is all about and how India and New Zealand has arrived finals.
Sure. Let's look at the ground rules that were laid out by the ICC for this tournament. So the teams participating in the tournament would must play at least 2 matches in a series, and the series can be extended to a maximum of 5 test series. So each test series will carry 120 points, and it does not matter if it's a two match series or a 5 match series. For example, a 2 match series will mean 60 points for a test, and it comes down to 24 points for a 5 match series. So in November 2020, due to the pandemic, all tours could not be completed due to the travel restrictions. ICC had decided to change the point system. So it announced that a point system of the points earned will be calculated as a percentage of the points that were up for grabs, and the team will be ranked likewise. So for example, a team, if it has contested for 480 points and won 360 points, so it would have scored 75%. So these are the basic rules that were laid down. And the inaugural World Test Championship started on the 1st of August 2019, just for the record, with the arch rivals Australia and England head on in the 5 Test match Ashes series. So these are the basic rules.
Thank you, Manoj. I think this change to percentage point system has what irritated Ravi Shastri and Virat Kohli, isn't it? They came out in press conference and they said, all of a sudden the rules has changed. Like, we cannot do anything, because before the rule change, India was on the top of the table. Once the rule has changed, India, I think, slipped to 3rd position or so. But Raja, what is your take here? Because it's a pandemic and ICC has to come up with some solution, right? So I don't see any better solution than this if they want to complete the series as planned. So what are your thoughts on that, and take us through how both the teams has reached finals?
So yeah, I completely understand. It's a very difficult position that the ICC found themselves in. Losing a major part of the year due to the pandemic, and even when the lockdowns were lifted off, the cricket couldn't be as widespread as it could be. So considering the situations, I think they made a change pretty late, and I think maybe in the next cycle or so it wouldn't be the same. So considering what the cards that were dealt, I suppose they did the best they could. We've already touched on it, how New Zealand and India are facing off in the WTC finals. And talking about India's journey, how it got there. So India played 6 test series, from 2019 onwards. And they ended up with 3 home series and 3 away series. And although New Zealand played 5 test series and they couldn't complete the Bangladesh tour due to the pandemic. So they played 3 home and 2 away series. And both the teams averaged above 70% of points contested for. India, had a pretty good run throughout the throughout the cycle, where they beat West Indies, South Africa, and Bangladesh pretty handily. And our friends in New Zealand would like this point where they really walloped India when India toured New Zealand last year. So it put added pressure on India to finish well. And considering strong teams such as Australia and England to finish, they did fairly well to finish in the number 1 spot.
Thank you, Raja, for taking us through it. And Stu, your thoughts on New Zealand's journey to finals?
Oh, yeah. So look, I mean, it's, as you said, you ran through there. I mean, I think when you're running through both sides, you see the strength of what they've done, but you also see kind of the glaring, the negatives on both of them. I mean, you touched on India when they came to New Zealand. You know, that was, I think if you look through our list, that's really the marquee series that we won. You know, whereas you flip it around, we had, I mean, when we were talking about Adam and Michael and myself and Raj, our other co-hosts of the Top Order, when we were due to go to Australia back at the end of 2019, we sort of had high hopes for what New Zealand could do. We really thought that they'd been playing great cricket, and you know, it didn't happen for them at all. Lockie Ferguson got injured in the first test, and they went there on, you know, after playing in England at home, and that was not actually a World Test Championship points for that series, but they did play very well in that series and looked the better side against England. And yeah, we thought they would perform well, but just didn't happen for New Zealand. And Australia's always been a tough place for us to go. And I guess fortunately, you know, you start the World Test Championship, 1 win from your first 5 tests. It's looking pretty difficult to get in from there. But you know, we just played this summer. I guess we knew at the start of the summer, if we win our 4 tests that we have, then we're a chance. And I think, you know, I do appreciate it. It's very fair, those comments. Probably Australia most, that, you know, New Zealand hasn't played as many tests as the other nations. We've played at home for the majority of our wins. I do understand all of that, but I do also think that, you know, we're a very strong test side now. So I do think we deserve to be in and around at least the top sort of 3 or 4 teams in the world. And, you know, we'll hopefully give ourselves a good account of ourselves in this final.
Definitely, Stu. Thanks for your thoughts on this. And let's move to the finals of the WTC. So before we get into advantages or disadvantages that the both team has, let's look at where they are playing and what is the history of the playing conditions there. So they are going to play in Southampton, Aegis Bowl. So initially the match was planned in Lords, but again, the Southampton ground has an integrated Hotel Hilton with the stadium, and it's easy for players in the bio bubble to manage the situation. So they have shifted the, you know, finals to Southampton from Lords, and England has played 3 test matches on this ground, particularly after resumption of test cricket last year, 2 with Pakistan and 1 with West Indies. So like if we look at the ground, basically, so team winning the toss has choose to bat 5 times out of 6 times. Like there has been history of 6 test matches on this ground, and India played 2 test matches so far in this ground. So in 2018, they have played their last test match here and they lost the match by 60 runs. And New Zealand haven't played a test match on this ground. Pakistan, in the first test match, they played with 1 spinner. And in the second test match, they went with 3 spinners. So India, on the other hand, in 2018, when they played on the ground, so Ashwin played for India, and England used both Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali. And Moeen Ali is in fact man of the match for that match. And since 2010, India has toured 3 times and won 2 out of 14 games. And New Zealand has toured twice and 1 out of 4 games. So what I'm trying to say, both these teams, India and New Zealand, doesn't have a great history of winning in England. So I think the location being in finals location being in England is definitely a good neutral situation, because it is going to test the strength of both the teams. And like a lot of people are saying, in fact, 2 days back, Ravi Shastri, India's head coach, has come up in press conference and said a 3 test match series would have been better final. So Michael, your thoughts on this? So do you also prefer 3 test matches as final?
Well, I think ideally, all things being equal, a World Test Championship final played over 3 matches is much more likely to end up with the better team, if you like, taking home the trophy. I do think that there's a lot of romance involved in a one-off final where either team can, you know, perform on the day or over 3 or 4 days and take away the trophy. So I think there's a lot to like about a single final, given that we've got a potential 6th day for weather, and we've seen weather impact the first test between England and New Zealand at Lords. There's lots of permutations at stake there, but I do like the idea of a 1-match final, because there is a bit of a and anything can happen. And that team like New Zealand, who might be the underdog going into that game slightly, will feel like if they play good cricket over those first 3 or 4 days, they're in with a big chance of taking away this match. I think if it was a 5-test series, India would fancy themselves a lot more strongly. But in a 1-test series or a 1-test match, anything can happen.
True. And Raja, your thoughts on this? What would you have preferred?
I agree with what Michael just stated. I think for the for the sake of equanimity and parity of this thing, a three match series would have been wonderful. But there is a bit of drama added to the one-off final. I agree with that, and I think both it is going to be considering what the ICC has added in terms of reserve days and all. And a result would be possible if not lost due to weather. So I think it would be a good game overall.
So Adam, do you think moving game from Lords to Southampton is advantage for India or New Zealand? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think certainly in terms of the 3-test series that you talk about, that would be preferable, but very difficult to squeeze the IPL in if we're going to play an extra 3 test matches in this little window. In terms of the ground, look, I think probably the bigger factor is that New Zealand are obviously in England at the moment, not necessarily warming up, but certainly having 2 tests to get acclimatized. I think in terms of the grounds, look, it's a pretty difficult question to answer because there's only been 6 test matches at the Ageas Bowl or the Rose Bowl as it was previously known. And when you actually look at the statistics, it's actually a slightly higher scoring ground than Lords. Although obviously Lords has got, the benefit of over 130 test matches being played there. So, you've got a little bit more surety in the data there. I think the biggest thing, though, is all of the English grounds now, and the Rose Bowl particularly, or the Ageas Bowl particularly, is a relatively new ground and has been built with very, very good drainage so that they can make sure that they get plenty of cricket all throughout the English summer. So I think even though we're not that far out from the game in terms of time, the weather at the moment, the fact that it's pretty wet, I don't think it's going to make a massive difference. You could still see a wicket that's going to be and start relatively dry and potentially favour spin. And you talked about that 2018 test with both Rashid and Moeen Ali playing. So I think if you were in that one-off shoot-off with both sides, flying in and maybe having a week or 2 to get acclimatised and warm up, look, I think it would probably be India that would start as favourites, but I certainly think that New Zealand being in the country is going to give them that ability to acclimatise and probably be in a position where they're going to be able to exploit particularly any seam-friendly conditions that exist. And, we've seen that with the bowling performance that Jamieson, Southee, Wagner have put in this test match that's taking place at Lords at the moment as well.
Yeah, true. And my next point is this ground a true representation of English conditions or not? Because why I'm bringing up this point is usually spinners are like negligible when we play in England, right? It is more about seam and swing bowlers. And this is the only ground where spinners will come into play, if at all. I mean, if the pitch is prepared like what they have done for the previous matches. Of course, this time ICC will be, overviewing the preparation of the pitch, not the ECB. So, Stu, what do you think about this? Like, do you think India has a chance, edge here because of moving to Southampton, because they have a strong spinners? Or do you think that's fine because, New Zealand is playing 2 test matches already in England, so that will neutralize this? What do you think?
Yeah, look, I would tend to defer to what Adam just said there. I mean, he's got the knowledge of the English conditions. I mean, when it was first announced, I read a lot of reports suggesting that, moving to the Ageas Bowl would provide more spin perhaps than other other English conditions. And I'd probably be interested more in how many. I guess we probably get to it a bit later, and the makeup of the Indian side, because you've had such a strong, the recent sides that we've seen, obviously, even in Australia, being able to, make use of the spin in perhaps not so friendly conditions. I'm really interested to see the balance of the bowling attack that they go with. I mean, with New Zealand, we'll get to that soon, but I don't even know if we'll play a spinner, as much as this supposedly favours spin. Whether it favours, New Zealand's best balance of their side is probably the bigger question.
Yeah, so Manoj, Ashwin has 67 wickets in the WTC cycle so far, and he's just 4 wickets away from being the highest wicket taker. So do you think Ashwin will get those 4 wickets in the finals, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, what's important is to do well in the game. Whether he gets 4 wickets or not, it's a different story. But it all depends on the conditions there in Southampton. Knowing Ashwin, he might, what's important is to win the game. Ashwin is a key player here. That's my opinion.
Yeah, sure, Manoj. So Raja, we all know Indians like crowd, right? We have seen that happening in Chennai Test match recently with Australia, and we have seen that many times. Like probably that will give them some kind of adrenal rush. So recently we read the news that they are going to allow crowds. So do you think India will take an inspiration from there, or how do you see crowds being allowed for the finals?
More than I think having crowds will be a boost for both teams, in fact. But definitely considering how Southampton is in terms of the demography, I think the South Asian crowd would be higher. But playing WTC final with that kind of marquee and a pedigree without crowds would have been a huge loss for the sport, and it's very positive that the authorities have allowed that. Definitely, because both teams are they will derive a lot of energy from the crowds within their respective supporting groups, and speaking for what India might do, we all know how Kohli gets the energy from the crowd, and then that just brings about a different kind of a mindset to the player. So I think it's going to be an interesting thing, and definitely good sight to see, especially for us who are here without who are under so much crowd control and all that.
Yes, at least we can escape artificial crowd noise from Sony or Star Sports that is killing us all these days because of lack of crowds. So
absolutely.
So Michael, I want you to tell whether New Zealand has an edge here because they are playing 2 test matches with England ahead of WTC finals, or do you see any downsides of it?
I don't think there's any downside to New Zealand playing 2 test matches against England in the lead up at all. I think their fast bowling unit will be well tuned and ready to go. I think Kane will manage their workloads expertly across the 2 test series. Of course, Trent Boult is going to miss at least the first test. I would imagine he'll play the second test at Edgbaston as a tune-up for the World Test Championship final. And you look, the way that they've bowled in that first innings to have England 140 for 6, even though England ended up 278 all out with some fine lower order batting, I think they are in pretty good form. Jamieson in particular was irresistible, and it was very difficult to play in those seaming conditions. Look, I don't think we want to read too much into the spin going into this test match, because although Mo Ali has 17 wickets at 15 at the ground, you have a look at Yasir Shah and Dom Bess have both played 2 and 3 tests respectively and average over 60. Jimmy Anderson at that ground averages under 22. Ishant Sharma averages 16 and Jasprit Bumrah averages under 25. So for both of those bowling attacks, the pace bowlers will feel like they can still do a lot of damage at the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. I think it will help the fact that Devon Conway has made a double 100 on debut and will feel very comfortable at the top of the order for New Zealand. And that batting lineup looks pretty assured. I'd like to see a little bit more from Colin de Grandhomme over the next test match or 2. He's been pretty quiet so far in this test. Of course, they've got Daryl Mitchell ready to go if they need to make a switch there. So from a New Zealand point of view, 2 tests against England is definitely a good warm-up, and I don't see any downside at all.
Definitely, Michael. I think you have made a good point about the bowling as well, and we have a few questions from Twitter as well on bowling or pace battery of both the teams. There is no I don't say it as a downside, but if I have to nitpick something out of the New Zealand series with England, so there is just 3 days gap between second test match of New Zealand and WTC finals, and of those 3 days, 1 day or more than half a day it has to be in traveling, because they are playing in Edgbaston and then they have to reach Southampton. Probably it's 3 hours or 4 hours drive, if I'm not wrong. So, but do you think, Adam, do you think the another 2 days New Zealand would have fancied, or do you think it's fine? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, you'd need a crystal ball. I think if they come off a win at Edgbaston, I think you wouldn't get them on the coach quick enough to get a couple of hours down the motorway to Southampton and get checked into that Hilton hotel and be ready to go. If England put up a performance at Edgbaston and put some miles into the legs of those New Zealand bowlers, I think that that's a slightly different story. The spin thing is an important factor of this. I think there's no doubt that India's spin attack is going to be better than New Zealand's, whichever personnel both teams put out on the field. I have a sneaky view that Mitchell Santner will play because I think he's really the only option that's going to give some balance to that New Zealand team. But I wouldn't be surprised to see them go in with all 4 of those pace bowlers: Bolt, Wagner, Southee, Jameson. Wagner doesn't know any workload issues whatsoever. He'll bowl through a brick wall for his team. So I can't see that being a big issue. So I think Santner could be important in offering that sort of middle order ballast with the bat and a little bit with the ball. But yeah, in terms of momentum, which is often used in this current cricketing vernacular, we'll have to wait and see who's carrying that into the game. But one thing's for sure, the only team that can be carrying momentum into that game is New Zealand. India can't carry any momentum into that World Test Championship final from a Test cricket perspective.
Yeah, sure. So, Raja, my next question to you, we have a question from Twitter as well, from Shonak. Which team has a better pace battery, New Zealand or India?
If you ask me, I would vote for New Zealand, because the likes of Bolt, Southee, Wagner, Jameson are incredible. What they've managed to do in the last 12 to 18 months. India has, arguably, this is our best pace attack in probably decades, right? Your quartet of 5 to 6 bowlers that India has managed to, have in the last few years. Your Bumrah, Ishant, Shami, Umesh, Siraj, and likes of Saini or even Thakur and all these guys, they've been doing great. But I think there is a bit of a considerable distance that they need to cover between what New Zealand has to offer right now in terms of Bolt, Southee, Wagner, Jameson. So,
Michael, you have India and New Zealand jersey as well behind you. So, what are your thoughts on this? Which team has a better pace battery?
Better pace battery. I think New Zealand's, because each bowler provides such a point of difference. So you've got world-class swing from Trent Bolt. You've got world-class swing from Tim Southee at the top of the order. Then you've got a guy who can bowl 35 overs with a broken toe, and every ball will be at the body and making the batsman make a decision in Neil Wagner. He's been incredible the last 18 months, and at 35 is probably the fittest man in world cricket. And then you've got Kyle Jamieson, 6'8", can swing the ball both ways and provides, when he gets that length right, he's very, very hard to resist. So, this Indian bowling attack is probably as good as I've seen in the 35 years I've been watching Test cricket. But New Zealand's attack at the moment, because every player offers such a point of difference, I think New Zealand have the slight edge. But, you wouldn't want to underestimate the damage that Ishant and Jasprit Bumrah can do if they're on fire with a talking Duke's ball.
And adding to that, these guys can bat also, right? That's another big advantage. Even Jamieson can bat, and Tim Southee. In fact, I was going through some stat yesterday and found Tim Southee has more success than AB de Villiers in Test cricket.
Yep.
So that's incredible.
And they're going to need all of those runs, because at some point in that Test match, that batting lineup's going to be under pressure. We saw it in this Test match against England. Despite Devon Conway's 200, there wasn't a lot on offer there in that middle order for New Zealand, other than Nicholls and also Neil Wagner at the end, who's probably the world's best ever number 11 at this point. So, no matter who New Zealand go with, those batters are going to need to be making useful contributions at the lower order for New Zealand to put up a big total that they're going to need to put Virat and the middle order of India under pressure.
And traditionally, India has the problem of cleaning up tail. So definitely, these kind of batting from New Zealand, 8, 9, 10, or 11 for that matter, is going to hurt India. But definitely, like all of them will come up there with their own plans, for the opposition. So let's get into playing 11. I think we spoke a bit about how the teams have prepared for the finals and what are the conditions. So let's look at playing 11. So Raja, why don't you start with the top order for India? Whom do you think will be top order for India?
I like Shubman Gill and Rohit Sharma at the top. I know Mayank Agarwal is there, and if needed, Vihari can also open. But I like the idea of Rohit and Shubman at the top.
So Manoj,
And
what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Raja. I think Rohit Sharma can be destructive at the top. So Rohit Sharma, of course, with Shubman Gill. Shubman Gill has sound technique and he can tackle the New Zealand quicks. I think these two should open the innings for India, followed by Pujara, the Rock of
Pujara,
Gibraltar.
Kohli, and Rahane are like obvious choice in between. So like
Right.
your top two are the ones that are in question, and I think I agree with you. Gill will come along with the Rohit to open because like he was the one who is playing in the Indian team for the past 4 or 5 test
Right.
matches, right?
Right.
He hasn't done great against England in the home test series, but I don't think he has done anything to drop him. So I think they will continue that combination. So top 5 slots are fixed now: Rohit, Gill, Virat, and Rahane and Pujara, right? So who will come next? Do you think Vihari will get a chance in this match, or what do you think?
I don't think so. I really don't think Vihari will get a chance, though he's already in England, played a couple of county matches for Warwickshire, if I'm not wrong. But I think Rishabh Pant will be the next in for India.
Yeah, Rishabh Pant will anyway play. The only question will be whether if India want to play 2 spinners, they have to drop Vihari. There is
Right.
no other option, I think. If India want to play Ashwin and Jadeja both, they have to drop Vihari and then bring these 2 guys. So Raja, your thoughts? Do you think India will play both the spinners?
It's also about what roles they can fill. So Vihari can definitely bat, and he's been doing well for Warwickshire also. So, but what say someone like Jadeja offers at that spot, or Ashwin is pretty much difficult to drop after a Man of the Series performance against England. So Jadeja has been playing his best cricket, you could say, in his entire career and across formats. So it would be difficult for Vihari to fit in, definitely.
I agree with you, Raja. I think I don't think he had a great county because he played only 3 matches. Vihari played only 3 matches, and unfortunately, I think he got only 150 out of the 6
Right.
innings that he has played. So he may get a chance, or he will definitely get a chance going into England series. But for finals, I
Sure.
think it's difficult for them to fit in Vihari unless they want him to open along with the Rohit, and like what they have done in Australia last year, and that was not successful though. But that could be one option if they want to fit in Vihari. But I don't think they'll be so much desperate to fit in Vihari. So do you guys think now both Ashwin and Jadeja will play?
Yeah.
Yes,
I
yes, I
do.
think
I do think that. Yeah.
Adam, do you think India will go with 2 spinners?
I genuinely think it's too early to tell. I think most teams would know that there's sort of 12 players on the eve of the game and potentially be tossing up that option between whether it's an extra batter or an extra seamer and an extra spinner. So look, I think it's too early really to tell. I think New Zealand have probably got the easier choice because I think they don't have that abundance of spin options. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Gary Stead, the New Zealand coach, to knock on any of those seamers' doors and tell them they're going to miss out on that World Test Championship final. So look, I think that's probably a clearer selection choice than the Indians have got with the spin options and the spin riches that they've got in that squad.
Yeah, I think if you ask me, if spinners doesn't have anything on the pitch, India will play 1 spinner. If spinners have something on that pitch, India will go with 2 spinners. That's because
absolutely.
playing 1 spinner for India has been traditionally, a strength, and because both these guys, be it Jadeja or Ashwin, can bat a bit, and that's an added advantage. So if they think spinners has something on the pitch, definitely they'll go with two spinners, because many people who sent those questions on Twitter also wanted to know what combination they'll go with. But I agree with you, Adam. Like, it may be too early to say, but like I said, India will tend to go with two spinners. I mean, if not with one spinner. So now comes to fast bowling battery of India, Manoj. Whom do you think will be the fast bowlers for India? Let's say they'll go with two spinners for now. And whom do you think will be three fast bowlers if they are going with two spinners?
I think hands down, Bumrah, Shami, and Ishant. Those would be the three they will try to pick for the match.
I think that sounds fair, because Ishant, I think away from home, England is one of his better playing grounds, like better playing country. England suits him, and Shami, we know what he can do. And like Ishant, Shami, and Bumrah, I think Bumrah haven't played much test matches against England, in England or against New Zealand. But I think a bowler of Bumrah's caliber may not lose his place. But there are things going around that Siraj may play in, and where do Siraj play, if at all? Siraj plays. Do you think it is possible for Siraj to play in the WTC finals?
Yes. If in case they decide to play him, if it's not spin friendly, maybe drop Ravindra Jadeja and bring in Shami. That would make a case for him. Otherwise, I don't think there's a place for Siraj in this team.
Raja, your thoughts on fast bowling for India?
I agree. I think what Manoj has put forward, the three choices are the number 1, 2, 3. That would be my bowling attack, pace bowling battery. Just in case, as you said, maybe if Jadeja or Ashwin are not playing, maybe that's when Siraj gets an opportunity.
So, Michael, your thoughts on India's fast bowling options?
I think it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? I mean, Bumrah and Ishant Sharma have both played there and averaged under 25. Mohammad Shami is probably the next best guy who complements that pace bowling lineup. I think you would have to have a look at the conditions. If it's overcast overhead and the wicket is going to offer a bit of assistance to the fast bowlers on the first 2 days, India might go with a 4-man pace attack and hope that they've got enough batting. But I think for the overall balance of the team, Ashwin and Jadeja at 7 and 8 give them enough batting and enough spin options to counter the fact that, if you play Bumrah, Sharma and Mohammad Shami, you're not picking them because they're great batters. So I think that'll be the way that India go. I think they'll go with the two spinners because they've been so strong in that department. And because potentially that will give them the best opportunity to score runs as well. Because with, if you had Bumrah, Sharma, Shami and Siraj 8, 9, 10, 11, that's a pretty long tail to take into a test match against New Zealand.
Definitely. I think we have summarized India's playing 11, and I think we have hoped, I think we have answered some of the Twitter questions as well. So, Stu, why don't you start with New Zealand's playing 11?
Yeah, well, I guess there's a lot more questions in the Indian one. I think the New Zealand one, there's only really one now. I guess before we played this England series, there was some talk about, who would open for New Zealand. I think Devon Conway's answered that pretty emphatically in that first test knock for him, getting a double 100. You can't do much better than that. So I think he's firmly established himself there, and we'll see him open with Tom Latham. You've got Williamson, Taylor, Nichols filling out the middle order, I expect, and then BJ Watling in at 6. And then the real question is who bats at 7 and who plays that all-rounder role. Given the way they've selected in this first test against England, suggests that it'll be a straight shootout really between Mitchell Santner and Colin de Grandhomme, and that may reflect the pitch conditions, whether they think spin will play a part. I know Gary Stead has mentioned many times that he likes to play a spinner just for the balance of the attack, even if probably in New Zealand conditions spin doesn't play a part. You have seen him still play Ajaz Patel at times at home, and Mitchell Santner featured and actually picked up a crucial wicket to win us Pakistan test earlier in the summer. So, yeah, I guess if I had to tip someone, I think they probably will lean Santner at this point. And then you're just looking at those four quicks: Jameson, Southey, Wagner, Bolt to fill out the side. I suppose if there was any question in the batting lineup for me, it might be Ross Taylor. I mean, he's had a really lean run in the last sort of 18 months. He's scored, I think, 150 in his past 14 innings. But I just can't see the way that New Zealand, I guess, holds Taylor in such high regard. What a tremendous performer he's been for us over the years, and the way that Williamson and Stead, their selection policy has been very loyal and has supported. I know on our podcast we spoke with Matt Henry a few weeks ago, just before they left, and he spoke about how the players were really, they've built towards this, and how exciting it was that they've had this World Test Championship final as a carrot for particularly this New Zealand home summer just now, but over the past couple of years. And for someone like Taylor, who's been there throughout all of that, to miss out, I think he would probably feel very unlucky. But I think if you're picking purely on form, if Taylor doesn't get a run in these two English tests, then he's probably the one that's under the most pressure in that batting lineup.
So, Michael, your thoughts on playing 11 for New Zealand?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to that question of whether or not New Zealand play a spinner. If they play a spinner, I think they're going to have to play Mitchell Santner, given that they can't not play their four fast bowlers. So it will have to be a spinning all-rounder who could bat at 7. Mitchell Santner just about fills that role for New Zealand. I think I would prefer, if I wanted to play a spinner, I think my preference would be to play Ajaz, but I just can't see how that they would fit Ajaz and the 4 fast bowlers into that lineup, because it means, you would have Jamieson batting at 7, and then Wagner or Southey batting at 8, and then you've got the other guys sort of 9, 10, 11. So I don't think that's going to work for New Zealand from a batting point of view. I think it leaves their tail too exposed, too long. So I think if New Zealand do play a spinner, they'll go with Mitchell Santner. Otherwise, I think it'll be Colin de Grandhomme to provide a bit of batting at 7 and a little bit of nibbly 70-mile-an-hour seamers.
Yeah, if at all, if they think 2 spinners has to be played, I think Kane Williamson is going to roll his arm, isn't it? I think he has been practicing that.
He's a pretty reluctant bowler, though, Shrinath. He doesn't like to bowl very often, and he will bowl if he has to, but I think he would much rather prefer that his fast bowlers do the job up the top and knock the Indians over early.
So, Adam, your thoughts on playing 11?
Hi, look, no different really to Stu and Baldy. I think the one thing I'd just add into the mix is I think Kyle Jamieson will finish his career as a pretty decent number 7 for New Zealand. I think he could be an all-rounder in the mould of an Andrew Flintoff, I think. So look, I genuinely think probably at the moment he's a good 7.5. And look, I guess a little bit like that Indian lineup with a combination of Santner and Jamieson. I think they've got that sort of middle order batting covered so that they can get what is their real strength in that seam attack. And look, I think Kyle Jamieson is going to be a real handful for the Indian batting lineup as well.
So as we see now, I think only one of the Colin de Grandhomme or Santner can play, right? Both of them cannot play if they have to make 4 fast bowlers. Am I right, Stu?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to really do that, they'd have those fast bowlers, and I just can't see how you can do that. I mean, they have done that in the past, but that was really before Jamieson kind of came onto the scene, and now that he's there, I just can't see how you can take that black cap off him. He's just done so well. He's made every poster winner and just been tremendous. So yeah, I can't see how they do it and really why they would do it, because I mean they've done it in this test and this first test against England, and I don't think it's really worked, to be honest. They've gone with it's easy to say now that both Santner and de Grandhomme got ducks, but Santner's barely bowled. De Grandhomme hasn't picked up any wickets, so I just think it's kind of unnecessary for them to play 2 all-rounders when we've got such a strong bowling attack to play with.
So let's pick our own man of the match choices for the WTC final before we go into who will win. And Raja, let's start with you. So whom do you think will be the man of the match from both the teams? Like, whom do you think, will be the man of the match here?
Interesting. I think all format considering, I think Ishant might have a good game for India. Considering might be able to extract certain bounds, and he's the only different kind of he is the hit to take kind of one. Maybe he would have a best opportunity as per my understanding.
Michael, who is your choice then?
Kane Williamson for me. I think he's the best batter in the world, and he doesn't feel pressure. At least it doesn't look like he feels pressure. I think Virat Kohli will get up for the match because he's got a point to prove that he is a better batter than Kane Williamson. But I just think Kane Williamson is just so calm and so collected that he's gonna put that team on his shoulders. He's gonna have a big first innings for New Zealand, and I think he'll be the difference between the two teams at the end of the day. I wouldn't be surprised if Pujara is man of the match or the best player on ground for India in their side. The two test matches that India have played, the only time they've gone past sort of 300 or up into 300 is when Pujara has batted well for them. So that test match that he played where he got 100, that was really the only time that India's top order have looked pretty solid playing at that ground. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Pujara, but for me, it's Kane Williamson, man of the match.
So Manoj?
Well, it all depends on who wins the match, isn't it? I mean, for me, Rishabh has a very good chance for the fact that he can play a squashbuckling innings and turn the match on its head. So he has a very good chance of being the star player for India if at all India wins, I would say.
So Adam, your choice?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go a little bit unorthodox, which if you listen to the Top Order podcast, you'll know I always like to throw some random stuff out there. For me, I think it's going to be Ross Taylor. I think he's a fantastic player of spin, and I think that's going to be really important for the way that New Zealand go about setting up this game. I also have a sneaky suspicion. We've talked a little about where he is in his career. I just think it'd be pretty awesome for him to maybe get a big daddy 100 and then ride off into the sunset with a World Test Championship trophy sitting in his saddlebag.
So Adam, we are going to look at player matchups in a while, but if you haven't noticed, Ashwin got Ross Taylor 5 times so far. So I think that's going to be a very good contest, isn't it? He's one of the better spin players for New Zealand, and Ashwin got him 5 times so far.
Yeah, look, I think that these kind of things from a matchups perspective are always interesting, but statistics only tell you one side of the story, and I think Taylor has an amazing pedigree, and I think this isn't going to be an absolute Bunsen burner. It might spin a little bit on days 3 through 5, but I think it'll be a pretty good batting deck and be fairly easy paced in the first 2 or 3 days. So. Look, I think when you're going into a game of this magnitude, those matchups actually really become about the top 2 inches and the brain power of those players. And both Ashwin and Taylor have played a lot of cricket, and I'm sure will have their methods well sorted out. So I wouldn't be reading too much into matchups at this stage.
So Stu, who do you think will be the man of the match?
Yeah, well, for me, I guess I'll stick with New Zealand here and go with Tim Southee. I think, as I said, I think that New Zealand's best chance to win this game is to bowl India out twice for under 300. And if that's going to happen, then I think Tim Southee plays a huge part in that.
So surprisingly, none of you went and picked any all-rounders. So I think I should pick Ravindra Jadeja. So I think Jadeja, more than man of the match, if Jadeja has reached a level of getting man of the match, I think it is going to be India's match, isn't it? Because he doesn't need really a spin-friendly pitch to get the wickets, and he can bowl long spells, and his batting coming at 6 or 7 is going to be crucial for India. So I think my pick is going to be Jadeja here. So let's quickly look at matchups. I think we have one of our friends, Naman Agarwal, who is on Twitter at Cover Driven for 4. So he has made some beautiful charts about the matchups. So if I look at the matchups, I think Tim Southee and Trent Boult, both of them has, pretty good success against Indian batsmen. So Adam, what do you think about, Tim Southee and Trent Boult? I don't think it's a surprising at all. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I definitely don't think it's surprising. I think the Duke's cricket ball in both of their hands in this English summer is going to be a sight to see. And look, I think historically, Indian batsmen have struggled a little bit in English conditions. It took Virat Kohli a long time to get going. Had a very, very poor tour, I think, in 2012. I was lucky enough to be at Lord.
Yep.
Oh, was it 14? Yeah. So, lucky enough to see him get out at Lords a few times against the England team. So, look, I think that's going to be really, really key. But look, I think the one thing, particularly with Pujara playing a lot of county cricket for Yorkshire, and he's probably taken a lot of that back to that Indian camp and talked about how to construct an innings and bat against that moving ball. So look, I think it's going to be a fascinating matchup, but I just come back to it. I think the pitch is going to be pretty flat. This is a big money spinner for the ICC. With the rights of this game going all around the world, they will be asking the groundsman at the Ageas Bowl to produce as close to a shirt front as possible. They'll want it to go the full 5 days, and particularly if there's a little bit of weather around as well, they'll want the pitch to be in a position where it lasts into that extra day if there is a bit of weather. So. Look, it's going to be fantastic to see all of these players at the top of their craft, really. And that's the other factor here is you've got two teams that I think to a large extent are both almost at the apex of where they are as cricket sides. You've got that experience from a batting perspective with the likes of Williamson and Ross Taylor in that New Zealand side. The emergence of someone like Henry Nicholls, who doesn't often get mentioned, but has had a fantastic start and even sort of slightly beyond that in his Test career. And then the same with the Indians as well, that fantastic pace attack that really, really, it doesn't go unnoticed now. We talk about it a hell of a lot with Bumrah and Ishant, and Mohammad Shami, I think, is going to be a fantastic practitioner with that Duke's ball as well. So, look, really, really looking forward to some of those matchups.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about Kohli. So if I see his matchups against New Zealand bowlers, Tim Southee got him 3 times, Jamieson got him 1 time, Bolt got him 3 times, and Wagner got him 3 times. So one surprising thing out of this is he scored decent runs against Trent Bolt and Tim Southee, but he couldn't score any runs against Neil Wagner. I think that is going to be key. I mean, Neil Wagner versus Virat Kohli is what I'm going to look forward. So Manoj, do you have any thoughts on matchups on India's batting? Whom do you think?
Not really. I mean, the players themselves wouldn't be looking at all these matchups, to be honest. I mean, at the end of the day, it's down to the match pressure, how who deals with the match pressure well will obviously go on to do well in the match. So I think the New Zealand Quicks would be looking closely at possible weak points of the Indians. For example, Pujara has had problems with the balls coming in, so they would like to exploit that. Or maybe Kohli is vulnerable on the off stump, balls pitched up. These could be the areas where the New Zealand Quicks would target the Indians. So yeah, these things, matchups is one, but then who can handle the match pressure well will do well in the match.
Definitely, Manoj. I think you have rightly pointed out that irrespective of what happened in the past, on the day who is going to perform well is going to come out as winner. So Michael, your thoughts on Ashwin, because Ashwin has been very successful against New Zealand, if not in these conditions, but as a whole, if I see, Ashwin has been the most successful Indian bowler against New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was fantastic in the series against Australia in conditions that weren't particularly favourable. I think if you played the test series, a 10-match series between New Zealand and India, Ravi Ashwin might win you 3 or 4 test matches just by himself. So he's going to be a very, very dangerous character, regardless of whether or not it's going to provide turn on day one at the Ageas Bowl. He's going to be one that New Zealand will have to plan for. Williamson and Taylor have obviously been dismissed by Ashwin a lot of times in Test cricket, but they've played a lot of tests against each other. So that's not surprising to me that Ashwin has had some success against New Zealand's best 2 batsmen. But he's going to be dangerous whoever he's bowling to, and particularly the left-handers, Conway, Santner, and Latham as well. Nicholls, all those left-handers he's going to be dangerous to, because he takes the ball away from the left-handed batter.
It's quite amazing, isn't it? Like normally, even he has got more left-hand wickets than Muralidharan. Like he has got half the wickets to what Murali has got, and he has got more left-handers than Muralidharan. Like I don't know. I keep mentioning on our podcast as well. It's never-ending love story between left-handers and Ashwin. Adam, you have something to add?
Yeah, look, you guys have certainly done more stats than I have. So, look, I'll be taking a big guess at this, but I think the point that Baldy makes there about those three left-handers, you know, we've not got any matchups for Devon Conway because he's not played against these guys in Test cricket yet. But you've got that New Zealand batting lineup with Latham, with Conway, with Mitchell Santner, with Henry Nicholls. So some left-handers in that order. And look, I would argue, and sort of you guys may have the stats to back it up, that Ashwin's obviously played in a DRS era a lot more than Murali did, and certainly with that, you know, with that sort of left-hander matchup piece, that's going to be really, really key. And look, particularly in England, he's very tall. He gets over the top, and I'm sure Lippy, as a former off spinner of some repute here in New Zealand, will probably talk about the technical aspects more, but the ball's not going to be going over the top of the stumps too often in England. So I think if Ashwin can just get the ball to go on with that arm or bowl that carom ball, your DRS is going to come into play. And with those left-handers in that New Zealand lineup, it's going to be really interesting to see the way that they combat his threat.
Yeah, in fact, Ashwin had a very good success against New Zealand, and following him, I think Ishant had a pretty decent success against New Zealand's batting. So your thoughts on that, Stu?
Oh yeah, look, I'll just add. I mean, you guys were talking about the seamers. I agree with. I can't remember who said it, but that Ishant. I know his stats are very good in England, and he's the kind of bowler that feels like he'll be really tricky for us to face because he's got the seam and utilizes that so well. So I think Shami, certainly from a New Zealand perspective, Shami, Bumrah, and Ishant are the bowlers we don't want to see. I would love them to play any of the other guys. And you guys touched on Ashwin. I mean, as an off spinner myself, I've loved watching his career really, throughout. But Binksy made a good point about Devon Conway, and he hasn't really been. He's been so tremendous this New Zealand summer, but he hasn't really been tested against spin. Not through any fault of his own. He just hasn't really had many spinners to play against, and that they don't play a huge role here in New Zealand. And that's probably the same when you think about his first class stuff. I mean, we do have some reasonable spinners in the background that don't really get their opportunities in New Zealand. But it's the same thing. They're not really able to, play a big role in how, I hope Conway obviously bats for long enough that we get to see him challenge Ravi Ashwin, because it'll be a tremendous contest.
So I think we have covered a lot of ground here. Still, the question may remain, like, who will win the WTC finals? Again, it's not if these are two imbalanced teams, or a weak against strong, we can say so and so will start as favorite, or this team has an edge. But they are playing in neutral conditions, and there are going to be two tough teams facing each other. So I don't want to ask like who is going to win this match and get some answers. Like, I really hope that we are going to get a 5-day test match or 6-day. I don't mind saying it on 6-day, but all we want is definitely a result and a clear winner. And let's hope may the best man wins. So, like we have discussed already, a 3 test match series would have been better, but nothing can be done about it. So special thanks to Stu, Adam, and Michael for joining with us today and sharing your thoughts, guys. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having us. It's been great fun.
Our pleasure, guys.
Yeah, our pleasure. Good luck.
Thank you. Same to you. So that's all for the episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for more such interesting episodes. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.